You know what you've got, but you also have rules in place of what you're going to do with that information, how it's protected by different items on your computer systems, different levels of encryption, different backup systems, and so forth. So talking about the how, we're going to talk about the four legs of compliance. And those are going to be data retention policies, your leadership in the agency or the company, the technology that you have in place to go along with the compliance, and then employee training. So in having a data retention policy, the first important thing to realize is this is not an IT problem, or this is not an IT issue. This is a company issue. Data retention policy is the first step in helping protect an organization's data and avoid, like we've listed here, civil, financial, and criminal penalties that increasingly accompany poor data management practices. So like with other things, with email usage, with computer usage, with internet usage, you've got policies for those, for how things should be. And a data retention policy is no different. So all data retention policies should describe the types of data the organization must retain, the length of the time the data should be stored, and the format in which the data should be stored. Easily overlooked, another element data retention policies should cover is instructions describing which organizational reps or which one of your people are actually authorized to delete data. Most agencies in the management system actually lock it down so certain people can't delete data. A lot, on the other hand, actually don't know that you have that capability. So a very important part of your policy. In addition, data retention policies should state that a specific information technology staff member should be responsible for confirming that all the data is properly destroyed before disposing of equipment. So we're not only here talking about listing out what types of information you should be keeping. A lot of people may ask for information like social security numbers when it's not really needed for certain types of things. Limiting who can delete data, but making sure that's in your policy written, and then having in good practice in the policy of what to do when you get rid of a computer. Most people just think, oh, it's okay to throw out a computer, or most people realize, hopefully, that now you can't just throw out a computer, you have to take it to a recycling center, but still making sure that that information is taken care of properly before just disposing of the equipment. Also, the data retention policy should clearly describe people covered by the policy, as well as the procedures that are to be followed in the event of a breach. Now, a breach can be many, many different things. The example I gave before, but it could be as simple as you dropped a backup tape in the road and you don't realize it for another half hour. That backup tape is effectively out in the world now with your data in it. So what you do with that data breach is differing on the different types of backup systems you have. Do you encrypt your backups or not? If you don't encrypt your backups, your action for that is going to have to be a lot different than if you do encrypt your backups. And we can talk about backup encryption offline if anybody happens to have any questions. Now, if that breach was, a piece of spyware getting in that starts collecting information from people, what they're typing on their computers, how do you handle that? But then what happens if a hacker actually gets into your system? These are all kind of things that you do need to, have information and plans for in your policy. Effective data retention policies must also describe the penalties that result from violations and require all covered parties to sign documentation saying that they understand the policy. We're talking about your employees, and everybody has to know that it's not okay to delete information that our policy says you can't delete. It puts the agency at a very, very high risk for penalties, for reputation damage, and so on. Your data retention policy should also clearly state that no one is to modify or destroy, delete data in violation of any kind of industry regulation. So you should have a person or persons who are allowed to delete that data, but also know what kind of data you can't delete at all. Once such policies are drafted, that's just the beginning. Make sure your ID department, leads the way. We said it's not an IT problem, but IT can be part of the solution here. Only policies that are actively monitored and enforced are really going to prove successful, just like any other part of the business and any other rules and regulations you have in your business. The data retention policy is one that we need to pay careful attention to and give some care. So our data retention policy, how long? That's the big question we always get. How long should we keep this information? Do we keep it forever? How about just 7 years, like we may keep paper files, or how about 5 years? Or how about what if we only keep faxes for 3 years? Those kind of things. Those are common questions. And what these depend on is, what kind of data are we talking about? Are you talking about accounting data? Are you talking about policies? Are you talking about just marketing and prospecting data? Maybe not as crucial. Some other factors that may, control that are how long do your carriers keep your data? Do we really need to keep copies of those certificates if we can get one off the website? Those are things that should be outlined in the policy. Will you have access to it if the relationship ends? And does your contract say anything about that? We've run into that too many a times. An agency says, "Oh, no big deal. I can go to that carrier's website and download copies of that information." Well, are you allowed to if something happens where your carrier relationship goes away? You may say that, well, the carrier relationship isn't going to go away. But we've even seen things like if agencies merge together, what agency is actually taking on the other? Does the new agency have that in the contract with the carrier? Does that agency have a problem with the carrier? I've seen agencies drop before, and they just don't have access to that info. All very important things to figure out. So with those things listed, I think everybody's still asking, how long? Tell us how long. And really, that's up to you. It's based on all the factors mentioned. But what we want to do is educate you for what kind of things to look at, what kind of things to figure out and decide are really going to affect your data retention policies. It's not uncommon to have that policy say different lengths of time for different things. But again, you're going to want to talk to your E&O specialist about these factors and have them help make that decision for you. The leadership, very important leg of the how. The policy is reflected in visibility, adoption, enforcement, and compensation by management. Period. If it's a policy like the people aren't allowed to browse things on the internet, but nobody's ever watching, we know that's not going to be taken to heart. Same thing goes for your data retention and information policy. This is something that has to be, have to have buy-in by all management first. It does sound basic, but it's a very important part of it. It's got to start from the top. The branch of the data retention that we're most involved with, of course, is the technology. Policy reflected in all aspects of training, education, procedures, compensation. Some of those branches we talk about are email archiving. The product that we recommend for email archiving is called GFI Mail Archiver. And this product works if you have your own Exchange server. It can be installed on that server or other servers.